Court, all rise, please. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons having anything to do before the Honorable, the Justices of the Supreme Judicial Court, now sitting at Boston, for and within the Commonwealth, draw near, give your attendance, you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Court is now in session. Please be seated.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Justices of the Supreme Judicial Court, I'm pleased to welcome you to this memorial sitting for the Honorable Herbert P. Wilkins, who served as an Associate Justice on this court from 1972 to 1996, and as Chief Justice of this court from 1996 until his retirement in 1999. I especially would like to welcome the members of Chief Justice Wilkins' family who are here, including his wife, Angela Wilkins, his son, Doug, and Doug's wife, Laura, his son, Steve, and Steve's wife, Sarah, his son, Chris, and Chris's partner, Rachel, and his daughter, Kate, and her husband, Thomas. We're also pleased to welcome Chief Justice Wilkins' friends, former colleagues and law clerks, judges, clerks, and others from across the court system, and members of the bar. Over the course of his long and illustrious career, Chief Justice Wilkins had an enormous positive impact on the quality of justice in Massachusetts, not only through the opinions he authored, but through his efforts to improve the legal system. This memorial sitting gives us an appropriate opportunity to honor him for his many contributions. The court now recognizes Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell on behalf of the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Chief Justice Budd. Good afternoon. And good afternoon, of course, to members of the court, to attendees behind me, and may it please the court. On behalf of the Attorney General's Office and the Bar of the Commonwealth, it is my absolute honor and privilege to present a memorial and tribute to the late Chief Justice Herbert P. Wilkins. Before I begin, I too want to recognize his incredible family and his friends who are in attendance. I cannot name each of them because we would be here for a very long time, but I will name a few. Angela Wilkins, who looks fabulous. Yes, that is a matter of the record. His wife of nearly 73 years. The Honorable Doug and Laura Wilkins, Stephen and Sarah Wilkins, Chris Wilkins and Rachel Perry, and of course his daughter Kate Wilkins and her husband Tom Mannix. Chief Justice Wilkins was born on January 10th, 1930, to Louisa and Raymond Wilkins. He grew up in Winchester and he spent his summers in Gloucester. After completing his undergraduate degree in 1951 from Harvard College, Chief Justice Wilkins decided to follow in his father's footsteps and attend Harvard Law School. In fact, his father, Raymond, also served as a justice on this very court, including as Chief Justice from 1956 to 1970. Chief Justice Wilkins graduated from law school, magna cum laude, in 1954, where he served as editor of the Harvard Law Review. After law school, he got a job as an associate and eventually was partner at Boston law firm now known as Palmer & Dodge. Chief Justice Wilkins lived in Concord during his adult life and served his community on the planning board, the Board of Selectmen, as its town council, and as a member of the Town Government Study Committee. While serving as the chair of the planning board, he was a strong advocate for the creation of the Minuteman National Historic Park, which was ultimately established in 1959 by President Eisenhower. In 1972, Chief Justice Wilkins was appointed Associate Justice of this court by Governor Francis Sargent. During his tenure and in his opinions he authored and joined, the court did several things, including found a state constitutional right to an abortion, including for people who require public assistance in affording one, recognized and enforced a state constitutional right to an adequate education, and developed a more robust body of law on equal protection than the Supreme Court did during the very same time. He was named Chief Justice in 1996 by Governor William Weld, who was also in attendance. At that time, he was the longest tenured justice of any associate at the SJC. As Chief Justice, Wilkins was a major force in the court's creation of the Board of Bar Overseers and the rules of professional conduct. Indeed, Chief Justice Wilkins was instrumental in ensuring that high ethical standards are upheld and withheld and followed in the legal profession, a testament to his own integrity and devotion to the rule of law. Throughout his storied career, Chief Justice Wilkins never lost his connection to Harvard. He was elected to serve on the Harvard Bar of Overseers in 1977 and was president of the board from 1977 to 1983. One of his countless accomplishments included a study of Harvard's relationship with its public and private neighbors. He interviewed each city councilor, the city manager, and numerous leaders of civic organizations, identifying areas where Harvard could improve upon its attentiveness and communication as a neighbor in Cambridge. Following his retirement from the SJC in 1996, Chief Justice Wilkins taught for 15 years at Boston College Law School. I could go on and on about his incredible professional legacy, but his most beautiful accomplishment was his love and devotion to his family, including his wife, Angela, who I previously mentioned, being married for nearly 73 years. Together, they had 4 children who were in attendance, 9 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren. An incredible life indeed. Chief Justice Wilkins was a cherished friend and colleague at all institutions fortunate enough to welcome his contributions, including this very court. His colleagues remember him and remembered him as warm, even-handed, and quick-witted. Our profession and our Commonwealth is undoubtedly a better place because of his work. It is a profound honor for me to be here today to pay tribute to Chief Justice Wilkins, an incredible judge who devoted his entire career to public service and the rule of law. A very timely memorial indeed. May Chief Justice Wilkins always serve as an example of judicial excellence, integrity, and civility. On behalf of the Bar of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I respectfully move that this memorial be spread upon the records of this very court. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General Campbell. The court now recognizes Attorneys Michael Tutor and Nancy Dolberg speaking on behalf of Chief Justice Wilkins' law clerks.
May it please the court. Good afternoon, Justices, Attorney General Cabral, Mrs. Wilkins, and members of the Wilkins families, fellow W law clerks, judges, lawyers, and friends from the Commonwealth and beyond. Along with my co-clerk from 1984-85, Nancy Dolberg, I am deeply humbled to be speaking to you on behalf of nearly 3 decades of Wilkins law clerks. I ended up as Justice Wilkins' law clerk in an unusual way. In 1983, when I was applying for clerkships, the federal courts briefly revised their policies for the timing of clerkship applications. This meant for the first time, law students like me were applying to and interviewing with the federal courts and the SJC at almost the same time. I interviewed with Justice Wilkins, and shortly thereafter, he offered me a law clerk position. But he said I only had 48 hours to say yes or no. At nearly the very same time, however, I was interviewing with U.S. District Judge Walter J. Skinner. When Judge Skinner told me that I would hear back from him in a week or so, I sheepishly told him that I already had an offer. He asked me, with whom? And I told him Justice Wilkins. Judge Skinner looked at me a little funny and responded, Herb Wilkins is the smartest and best judge you'll find in this Commonwealth. I have no idea why you're talking to me. So with that extraordinary endorsement, I accepted the clerkship with Justice Wilkins. I discovered very quickly that Judge Skinner had been right. Justice Wilkins really was the smartest judge I ever met in this or any other Commonwealth. He was also an extraordinary writer, a prodigious worker, and a quiet but forceful mentor. I think all of us who had the privilege to be his clerk came out of the experience much better thinkers, much stronger writers, and I hope better mentors ourselves. One other characteristic of Justice Wilkins should not go unremarked, however, and this was his deep conviction that lawyers at all levels owe an obligation to act in the public's interest. Justice Wilkins believed deeply in the need to preserve the integrity of the bar and bench, and to do so in a way that the general public could see and understand that. In support of these goals, Justice Wilkins dedicated tremendous energy in establishing our modern rules of professional responsibility, our board of bar overseers, and our system of bar discipline. As Arnold Rosenfeld, who is here in the audience, longtime bar counsel, wrote in 1999, from the time he joined the court and during his 27-year tenure, Herbert P. Wilkins was the most influential of the justices of the SJC in the formulation of the ethical rules, as well as the development of the mechanisms and procedures to carry out those rules. Bringing these rules and principles into reality turned out not to be easy. Justice Wilkins was an early proponent of the ABA's model rules of professional responsibility, which he and others believed were a substantial improvement over the then existing Code of Professional Responsibility. Despite a petition in 1986 from the BBA to adopt the new rules, adoption foundered on a few disputed provisions, most of which involved compensation and fee shifting for attorneys. Because of this, the SJC shelved the petition to adopt the model rules for nearly 10 years, a length of time that Chief Justice Wilkins later wrote was glacial and embarrassing for the justices of the SJC. I note that these somewhat direct comments were not unusual for their pithiness. During this time, however, Justice Wilkins did not rest easy. In bar disciplinary matters that came before him as single justice, Justice Wilkins wrote a series of seminal opinions that called out the need for lawyers always to be acting in the public's interest. To quote Mr. Rosenfeld again, any analysis of the Wilkins role in bar discipline leaves no doubt about his views. It is the public's interest that prevails over all other considerations. Being a member of the bar is a privilege, not a right. Lawyers are to be held to high standards, and if a lawyer should stray from those standards on a serious matter, then the imposition of discipline should be strong and consistent. Justice Wilkins' view that lawyers have a special obligation to serve the public interest extended to every aspect of the profession. And as usual, Justice Wilkins demonstrated this canon not just in words, but in deeds. As has been noted by Attorney General Campbell. Sorry. Justice Wilkins himself served in many. Yes. Justice Wilkins himself served in many civic, educational, and scholarly roles, many of which he did quietly, expertly, and without public notoriety, which was his way. But his commitment to society and the public interest was clear to all who knew him, and left a mark on all of us who had the privilege to work and live with him. I think it's no accident that his children all went into fields serving and improving the public space, whether as teacher, judge, counselor, or musician. And I hasten to add that Mrs. Wilkins, an extraordinary public servant in her own right, deserves outsized commendation for this as well. And when one looks over the roster of Justice Wilkins' clerks, I think few chambers have had as many individuals who went on to careers in public service, whether as judges, government officials, public defenders, professors, teachers, and so forth. This indeed is a continuing example of Justice Wilkins' legacy. At this time, I'm pleased to report that Justice Wilkins' commitment to the public interest will be made manifest in a new and meaningful way. Under the leadership of Justice Dewar and other members of the SJC's Pro Bono Committee, the annual program in which highly deserving law students are honored by the court for their commitment to pro bono service will now be named in tribute to Chief Justice Wilkins. In addition, the body of Wilkins clerks will be directly involved, both in speaking to the law students of his and this court's commitment to lifelong pro bono service, and by providing some modest refreshments to make the event more festive. As you all know, Justice Wilkins would not want the celebration to be lavish in any way. As I trust has been clear, I am deeply grateful for Judge Skinner's admonishment that I accept the clerkship with Justice Wilkins. We Wilkins clerks were each given a special gift to observe a person with such a keen commitment to the law, to integrity, and to the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry.
Good afternoon.
May it please the court. I'm Nancy Dahlberg, and together with Michael Tutor, I had the honor of serving as law clerk to Chief Justice Wilkins in 1984 and 1985. Those of us who had the privilege of clerking for W have carried the benefits with us for the whole of our professional lives. We are a community, a kind of extended family, united by having been mentored by the same wonderful man and befriended by his remarkable wife, Angela, and their entire family. In summer, W and Angela invited us to reunions at their vacation home in Gloucester. In the winter, we gathered to celebrate W's birthday. For his 90th in 2020, we wanted to do something really special for him. So 37 of us collaborated on the Book of W. It's amazing but fitting that so many of us can still describe the impact he had on us, sometimes in our professional lives and sometimes in our personal lives too. W was meticulous about his reasoning and also his word choices, and so we became meticulous. He was concise, very much to the point, so we tightened up our own writing. He was efficient and organized, so we tried to be efficient and organized too. He wrote groundbreaking decisions. In the criminal law, an area that particularly interests me, he authored seminal opinions that broke from the retreat of the U.S. Supreme Court on matters like constitutional limits on search and seizures. Brownlow Spear, former chief appellate attorney of the Committee for Public Counsel Services, captured W's habits of mind and empathy in observing that he proceeded from core principles of fundamental fairness. Having just retired from the appeals unit myself, I can say that Brownie's observation resonates with me. W cared deeply about traditional American respect for the rights of individuals, even individuals accused of doing terrible things. In 1980, after the U.S. Supreme Court's conservative reset had been underway for more than a decade, W wrote an article in the Suffolk University Law Review referencing the Declaration of Rights in the Massachusetts Constitution. He said that in recent years, a trend had taken hold in which the SJC has explicitly acknowledged its authority to act independently under the state constitution. He noted that this inclination was intensifying. The Declaration of Rights has served the citizens of the Commonwealth admirably over the past 2 centuries, he wrote. The Supreme Judicial Court has never treated it as a static document. Just as judicial interpretations of the federal Constitution have evolved over time, the Supreme Judicial Court's interpretation of the Declaration of Rights has changed. Today, consciousness of the potential in the Declaration of Rights is at a higher level than at any other time in the document's history. W's concern about rights carried over to specific cases. Frank Bailey, who's here today, and a retired U.S. bankruptcy court judge, but then a Wilkins clerk, recalls a pro se prisoner being brought into W's courtroom in shackles. As soon as he went out on the bench, Judge Bailey said years later, W said, "I want this man unshackled while he's presenting in the courtroom." The court officers were a little reluctant, but he insisted on it. As for his work ethic, and as Mike mentioned, W got a lot done. One clerk recalls being asked to write a memorandum on a complex case. 2 days later, W walked by his desk and plopped down a full opinion before he had a chance to give the judge his memo. W said, "Read that, see what you think." We young people who clerked for him were eager for cues about how to conduct our professional lives, and W offered useful instruction. Several of us who started working for him before taking the bar exam recall him offering advice that served as reassurance but also motivation. Not one of his clerks, he said, had needed time to study for the bar exam, and not one of them had failed it. So that message was received, and I got that myself. We learned something about familial love and mutual respect, too. W is very proud of his kids and very proud of Angela. She has a national reputation in education, with students ranging from young children with dyslexia to graduate students to non-native English speakers. Sometimes, to accommodate a delivery or an appliance repair, W would pack up a briefcase and leave early, saying, "I can do my work at home. My wife cannot." He loved accompanying Angie on annual trips to Hawaii, where she trained mid-career teachers and administrators. W had a dry sense of humor. He was also very kind. One of my colleagues recalled receiving a phone call from W directing her to gaze out the window, which looked out on Boston Harbor. Old Ironsides happened to be passing by in full majestic sail. "Arrange for your viewing pleasure," W said. Another clerk remembers W reviewing his law school transcript during his clerkship interview. The record was marred by one abysmal grade. W looked up at him and said simply, "You'll be happy to know we don't get many federal tax cases here." W was always there for us, to swear us into the bar, to write unsolicited letters of praise to future employers, to remember our children and to ask about them. Some acts of kindness were more unusual. Once he was returning with a clerk from a luncheon where wine had been served. W remarked, seemingly out of the blue, that someone he knew had turned a corner in his life by getting sober through Alcoholics Anonymous. Those words were life-changing. The clerk to whom they were directed joined AA soon after his clerkship ended. He's now been sober for over 35 years. The man we celebrate today was economical in his use of language. He wasn't one to encourage the repetition of words. But today, I know I speak for my fellow clerks when I say, Chief Justice Herbert Putnam Wilkins, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The court now recognizes the Honorable Margaret Marshall, who served on this court with Chief Justice Wilkins and then succeeded him as Chief Justice.
Chief Justice Budd, members of the court, Attorney General Campbell, Governor Weld, who appointed Chief Justice Wilkins as chief, Ms. Dahlberg, Mr. Tuteur, members of the Wilkins family, friends, and guests. On October 26, 1990, distinguished judges, lawyers, and public officials gathered at the Thorndike Library of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court to celebrate the upcoming 300th anniversary of the court. Retired Associate Justice Benjamin Kaplan, a revered judge, delivered the address, an elegant historical review of our nation's oldest court. Looking to the future, Justice Kaplan remarked in closing, "Our court will be pressed to consider whether the rights of the 1783 Massachusetts Constitution are broader than those in the Federal Bill of Rights." Present that evening were the Supreme Judicial Court justices, including Associate Justice Herbert P. Wilkins, whose 18-year career tenure on the court had already marked him as one of the greatest justices to serve on the SJC in its long history. Kaplan's remarks were a tip of the hat to his much younger colleague and to the jurisprudential revolution that Wilkins was pursuing. The revolution: state courts matter. State constitutions matter. 10 years earlier, Associate Justice Wilkins had written, the, quote, rumblings that state courts should act independently of the United States Supreme Court were intensifying, and the personal freedoms of the Massachusetts Constitution were, he wrote, about to receive new attention. New attention from whom? Justice Wilkins had great respect for the bar. He had boldly invited Massachusetts lawyers to ground their constitutional arguments on our state constitution, rather than asserting only federal constitutional claims, as they typically did at that time. The bar took notice. The revolution was underway. When a colleague later called the contention that the Supreme Judicial Court need not always follow the United States Supreme Court opportunistic and judicial chauvinism, Chief Justice Wilkins responded with pointed crispness. The justices of the Supreme Judicial Court, he wrote, are obliged to apply the state constitution where appropriate. They take an oath to do so. Today, no competent lawyer in this Commonwealth would make a constitutional assertion in any case, civil or criminal, without reference to our state constitution. The jurisprudence Wilkins developed so painstakingly is now deeply embedded in Massachusetts law. Herbert Wilkins was appointed to the court directly from a distinguished career as a leading litigator in private practice, a lawyer's lawyer who became a judge's judge. One cannot overstate the lasting impact that the jurisprudential revolution he led has had on Massachusetts substantive law. His contributions to improving the delivery of justice, fair and impartial justice to all, are equal in importance. Let me mention but a few of his most significant contributions, to which recognition has already been paid. An Associate Justice for 24 years, he was a long-time member and chair of the court's powerful Rules Committee. While the committee regularly reviews all rules of civil, criminal, and appellate procedure, it also promulgates rules of court-connected entities on which he was a leading expert. A month before he was appointed, the court had adopted and then established by court rule a code of ethics for lawyers. He was instrumental in establishing the Board of Bar Overseers and the Client's Security Board. He later observed that at the time he was appointed, attorney discipline was regionalized, uneven in its quality, largely unpublicized, and subject to the charge of discriminatory or at least indifferent enforcement. Protection of the public was Wilkins's lodestar. A careful review of the court's actions reveals his deep involvement in the successful development of those enforcement mechanisms. As for judges who engage in unethical conduct, the court adopted an ethics code for judges in 1972. That was followed by the legislature establishing the Commission on Judicial Conduct and the enforcement mechanism for charge of complaints of misconduct or disability by state court judges. 2 decades later, and at the behest of Chief Justice Wilkins, the court formed a new committee to review the code that had not changed significantly in over 20 years. Today, the nationally recognized reputation in which Massachusetts is held with regard for the discipline of unethical attorneys and the misconduct of judges is due in no small part to his persistent leadership. And what of the inability of those who turn to our courts for justice but cannot afford to pay for a lawyer to represent them? During his tenure as chief, the court approved a new pro bono public services rule, which provides that every Massachusetts lawyer should provide at least 25 hours of pro bono services or contribute monetarily to organizations that support legal services for persons of limited means. And for the first time in its long, long history of the court, it also established a standing committee on pro bono legal services. After he retired, his work on behalf of the public did not cease. The chief became the first chair of the newly established Access to Justice Commission, working tirelessly to make changes to accommodate those litigants who cannot afford to pay for a lawyer. The chief, for that is how he will always be remembered by me, is justly revered for his dignity, his kindness, his brilliant opinions. I revere him for his disciplined, deep commitment to giving meaning to the first words of the Massachusetts Constitution. all people are born free and equal. I close with the Chief's own words, written more than 45 years ago. Finally, we may hope that from trying to perfect the formal equality of all persons before the law, the nation and our legal system will pass to creating some assurance of actual equality of opportunity for all people. That is, he said, the opportunity of every soul to attain its best real realization. In his long journey to secure that hope, ours is a better Commonwealth, a better country than it was when Herbert Putnam Wilkins set out on his judicial journey.
Thank you, Chief Justice Marshall. The court now recognizes the Honorable Roderick Ireland, who also served on this court with Chief Justice Wilkins, as well as Chief Justice Marshall, and succeeded Chief Justice Marshall as Chief Justice. Chief Justice Ireland will respond to the pending motion on behalf of the justices in the court.
Chief Justice Budd, members of the court, Attorney General Campbell, Chief Justice Marshall, Mr. Tutor, Ms. Dolberg, members of the Wilkins family, and distinguished guests. Herbert Wilkins and I served together on the court for just 2 years, but in many ways, they were the most important years of my 17 years at the SJC. I say that because they were my first 2 years and Chief Justice Wilkins' last 2 years. When I joined the court in September of 1997, I was the first person of color to sit at the SJC in its long history. I was the junior judge, the rookie, and I don't mind telling you that although I had been a judge for 20 years by that time, I was still scared to death of making a mistake here at the big court. There were various new procedures and practices that I was expected to know as a justice on the court, but that I had to learn, including the traditions and protocols of the court, both explicit and implicit, and it was all very daunting. Fortunately for me, Chief Justice Wilkins did everything in his power to welcome me to the SJC. He was helpful, supportive, and encouraging. I was a beneficiary of his long career here, and he willingly shared his wisdom, knowledge, and experience. In doing so, he made an enormous difference in my life. Chief Justice Wilkins was a legal icon, a proverbial giant. He had a tremendous work ethic and was committed to excellence, not only for himself, but for the entire Supreme Judicial Court family. He was a dignified, respectful colleague with a reputation for knowledge of the law, clarity in his writing, integrity in his interpretation of legal precedents, fairness in his judgments, and adherence to the rule of law. Chief Justice Wilkins was smart, astute, and thoughtful. To me, it seemed that he had an encyclopedic memory of every case ever written by the SJC and the U.S. Supreme Court. He also knew all of the written and unwritten rules and procedures of the court. As a rookie judge, I was in awe of him. When it came to writing opinions, I marveled at the clarity of his opinions and how he could reduce even the most complicated case with numerous facts and issues to just a few pages. And he shared his expertise not only with me, but also with the entire bench. There is an art to crafting an appellate opinion, as I came to find out, and Chief Justice Wilkins had mastered that art. Chief Justice Wilkins was always focused on helping each of us to produce the right answer to the specific question or issue presented by the case. At the end of the process, he wanted us to produce opinions that were well written so that readers would understand our logic and our reasoning. He never got public credit for doing that, but he was a great editor. The chief understood the challenges of being an SJC judge and how difficult it was. He was always available whenever one of us needed seasoned counsel about whatever issues were on our mind. He helped each of us navigate the nuances of life on the SJC bench, choppy waters and all. Chief Justice Wilkins also had a wry sense of humor, which I was first exposed to at my swearing in to the court. As Chief Justice, he made brief remarks, and he told the audience that I truly was a first at the SJC. And then he explained that I would be the first justice in the 300-plus year history of the SJC with a last name starting with the letter I. Over the years, he became my mentor and my friend. I remember that long after he had retired from the court, when I was trying to decide whether to apply for the position of Chief Justice, he made a special visit to the SJC to talk to me, to urge me to apply. I never forgot that. And after I was appointed, I knew that he would be there for me if I ever needed counsel and sound advice on anything related to the SJC. And he was always there. I think that what I will remember most about Chief Justice Wilkins, and there's so much to remember about him on so many levels, is that he strove for excellence, for perfection, and that he raised the bar for everyone around him to also strive for excellence and perfection. Chief Justice Wilkins has a wonderful legacy that very few people have come close to attaining in the legal field. He was a legal giant, an icon. He was a real gem of a human being as well as a great jurist. And his legacy will live on for generations. On behalf of the justices of the Supreme Judicial Court, the motion of the Attorney General is allowed, and this memorial is to be spread on the records of the court. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice Ireland. That concludes our ceremony. On behalf of my colleagues and the entire court, I thank everyone for joining us today to share in remembering Chief Justice Wilkins. I'd also like to thank all those who made this special sitting possible, including Clerk Maura Looney, Executive Director and General Counsel Tim McGuire, Administrative Coordinator Blanca Tosado, IT Manager Dan Parlin, Chief Court Officer Joe Carreri and his team, and our facility staff. I'd like to invite you all to join us for a reception in the conference suite, which is just out those doors. Thank you.
Court, all rise. Memorial sitting is now adjourned.